I wanted to be a translator or an interpreter, but not just that. I wanted to do this working for the United Nations. At the time when I was growing up, there really wasn't much representation of black people in high-powered positions. So my parents religiously bought Ebony magazine. So it was Ebony magazine that just opened this other world of possibilities. And I saw that there were black ambassadors to the UN, and I thought, that's so cool, that sounds really cool, I want to be an ambassador. I guess what I wanted to do was to communicate, find a creative way of communicating to others, things that were in my head. I was taken to church and met some incredible young musicians, and that totally blew my mind. They were my age, they were very sophisticated, musically sophisticated, and I was exposed to gospel music. And you're in church and it's congregational singing, and then someone hears you and they say, oh, you've got a good voice, and you're like, oh, I don't, you know. And then you get asked to do things. That's how I got involved in singing with friends that I made when I used to attend church, and then we formed a 6-part girls group, a cappella. So we would take hymns and rework them and make them a bit more funky, and sing locally, and then you improve, and you then are asked to sing at concerts. And then the big thing is kind of being at a big convention, and there's a preacher from America that's come over, and it's like a massive deal. It's really, really a huge deal. Thousands of people. And then there's even the prime spot was the divine service, where it's the main kind of sermon, and then you get to sing at that point, just before the preacher preaches, or, which is the most, how shall I put it, it's the most serious aspect of the service. It's after he's preached, and then he says, it's an invitation for people to rededicate their lives. And then there's always a rather emotive song, because you're kind of calling people to make a very serious choice. But then I realized how music can really change people. It has this effect of helping people to make decisions, putting them into another space, time or place, really transforming their moods. And you can see it, you know, and it's a really powerful tool to be able to get up and be part of that process. Yeah, I think I've always improvised, even as a child. You make stuff up, you know, and you go into your own world, and it's very exciting. I know, definitely about 20 years ago, whatever, music colleges had no time for anyone who was involved in improvisation. They just about accepted jazz musicians. It's very different now, which is a good thing. But I you know, honed my craft going to the London Improvisers Orchestra gigs, and when they moved to Cafe Oto, I would attend there. And I don't know, it was just someone, Steve Beresford, who's been a great friend, he kind of invited me to kind of gig, and you try stuff out. You can only do it by doing it. And if you fall flat, then you just have to get up and try again. But I love it. I'm always improvising, you know, and life is an improvisation. It took me a long time to have the confidence to create something of my own. So it's fairly recently, I would say, and it's my piece, Sweet Tooth. I've worked with lots of people up until that point, so that would have been 2017, 2018, where I had the confidence, and some might say the madness. No, I say the madness. It was Wonka's idea to be in a piece and direct it and write it. But I wanted to challenge myself, and Sweet Tooth is such a personal project as well, and looking at the connections between the UK and the Caribbean through the sugar trade and really examining that experience from the triangle and the effect of that and the legacy of it. So it took a lot of time for me to research, and it was a major piece for me, and I was very glad to have done it and to have worked with wonderful musicians and a historian, choreographer to help me realise it. So I'm very happy with that work. Jeanne Lee came into my life when I was around 20, 21. Up until that time, I really didn't listen to many jazz singers. It's interesting because people might regard me as a jazz singer because I have a quartet that works in the jazz idiom, and I have some projects that look at contemporary free jazz. But I don't know many jazz standards. Jeanne Lee was a huge shock to me. First of all, she didn't have the kind of typical jazz voice, very silky voice. It is an unusual instrument. And she's a wonderful, well, she was a wonderful artist in her own right, and not just a singer. She was a composer, she was a choreographer, she was a trained dancer, she wrote poetry, she was involved in contemporary new music, worked with people like John Cage, knew Merce Cunningham, was part of the Fluxus movement. And I thought, there's too many parallels here. Oh no, what's going on? And then listening to her and listening to how her style changed and developed, and what she was exploring, it was such an inspiration for me, because I thought, here's a woman who has done or was doing what I'm trying to do many years later, and it's so humbling, because it's quite easy to think, oh, there's no one like me, but actually someone has always done it before. I'm really interested in respecting the work, the original versions, but then not modernizing it, but just representing it for now with my voice, with the musicians that I work with. And so I'm very excited about doing this project. There'll be people who want to hear it how Jeanne Lee sang it. Well, Jeanne Lee wouldn't want to hear me trying to sing it like how she sang it. She'd just say, Elaine, you have your voice, use it. Any album with Jeanne Lee and Rand Blake, or Jeanne Lee and Mal Waldron, really great places to start. And her album Conspiracy, where it's all her own work, where she works and collaborates with unbelievable musicians. Her work with her husband Günther Hempel, also fascinating, worthwhile checking out. And Dave Holland, there was a duo album with herself and Dave Holland. So those are names that other people might know but not necessarily associate with Jeanne Lee. So it's worthwhile just dipping in there. There's a lot on YouTube. She will surprise and delight. And she's not the name that most people mention when they talk of jazz singers, but she is hugely admired and respected amongst those who are seriously into jazz.